Russell Jackson, 17 construction in Vietnam. I won the raffle. So it's the only raffle I've won. And my number was drawn out. It was just my turn. That's the way I looked at it. I was doing a plumbing apprentice at the time, so they deferred me for 12 months, and then they forgot me for 12 months. So it was 2 years later before I went. So I was 22, I think, when I went in the army. I came home from work one day and my sister said to me, there's two very big blokes looking for you. And because I would say to people, I should ring them. People say, no, don't ring them, they've forgotten you, just let it go. And these two big blokes said I was AWOL, so absent without leave from the army. I said, no, I haven't been called up yet. And they said, yes, you have. I said, no, I haven't. And in those days, the people doing the telegrams, the young blokes doing the telegrams, used to bring the registered letters around that you'd sign, and I never signed a registered letter. They say I did, I say I didn't. And they took me to Watsonia for about 2.5 hours, and then let me go because they realised they were in the wrong. But about 3 weeks later, I was doing a doctor's certificate, a doctor checking me over.
And then what sort of training did you go through?
So then I did 3 months in Puckapunyal. So that's just rookie training. It's just general training. And then did 3 months core training up at Sydney. And you've got to do 6 months in the army. And I was 6 months one day in the army before I got on a plane.
And did you have to volunteer for Vietnam?
No, okay. I'll put it the best I can. There was a form. I want to go to Vietnam. I don't care if I go to Vietnam. I don't want to go to Vietnam. Not in those words, but in that sort of feeling. And I said, well, I was earning nothing in the army. I was earning, I think, $60 a week when I went in, and I was getting $35 a fortnight in the army. So I put in for Vietnam.
And how much were you getting in Vietnam?
Probably not that much more, but I weren't spending anything. Just, yeah, you had nothing to spend it on, really. Oh, there was BX and places like that, but yeah, that was, I think that was I can only think of that why I went in, why I signed the top one, but that'd be the main reason.
How did you get to Vietnam?
I flew. I went over for engineers. So they kept the engineer group of about the one in 17 construction, about 48 people, and they were taken there at different times. So we were a rotating group of people. Yeah, it was different to the infantry where they go over together and come back together, where we were different. We just went over and come back on our own time. I was based in Nui Dat. There was different times in the army, and I went over when the army was deciding or thinking about pulling out, because then we were fixing everything. And we were making bridges. We were refixing the hospital we bombed. Any of those things, they were getting fixed or repaired. We were building concrete slabs in the Nui Dat and flying them out with a helicopter, with a sky crane, and putting them in place with a sky crane, which was, yeah, quite good. If I kept busy, I was all right. Biggest mistake I did in the army was come home on R&R. Well, I was married at the time, so I came home and I didn't want to go back. Now, when I went into Vietnam, I thought, well, I'm going, that's it, you've got to do it. I was shocking when I got back. And I said to the boss, you've got to give me something to keep me busy. I'm going ready. And he sent me out land clearing because I'd done a radio course and I was on a radio out there. So there was D8s out there clearing the land, and they set me in a bed away from the tent, and I could never be with them. So I just stayed in that little tent by myself for 3 weeks, I think, or 4 weeks. And the time just went so quick. You got breakfast, chop it in, lunch, chop it in, tea, chop it in, and you got water and fuel during the day for the machinery. So it never stopped. The day just never stopped. And when it got dark, you went to sleep.
What were you clearing the land for?
Well, it was just trying to get the Viet Cong clearing their land. But the trouble is we clear it and it'd rain and grow again. But we cleared a lot of big stuff, you know, a lot of big trees, because there were a lot of rubber trees had just gone rotten. They were rotten inside. Yeah, so we land cleared a lot of them.
How did you find that experience? What was it like?
It was different and, as I said, just busy. You just woke up in the morning, you had to give call signs, you had to tell what colour smoke you were using during the day in a call sign and that sort of thing. So you had to think and work at it a bit. So it kept you... I can't tell you what I did. And that's how busy I was. You did different things, like the tanks. They weren't designed for Vietnam because as soon as it rained, they sunk. So land clearing, the blokes with the D8s had to go and save them a couple of times. And because I was the only radio, I had to go with them. So, yeah, different, just different.
Were you nervous of being under attack at all?
No, well, we had infantry guarding us during the night. It didn't worry me. And it was one of those things, what could you do about it? You know, you just got on with it. That's the way I look at life, you know, you just get on with it. Whatever you do, if you put your hand up, you've got to do it.
And what sort of conditions were you sleeping in?
I was sleeping in a little fold-up camper bed with a mosquito net over the top of me, and that was it.
So you had no bivvy or...
No, nothing. I think it rained one night, but I had a little hutchie over the top of that, you know. So I didn't get wet, but yeah. So, yeah, it was just a little like a lean-to over the top of the bed. Yep.
And in terms of food, you know, what was your food like?
Out there was good because we got 3 feeds a day choppered into us. Yeah, we had good food. Yep.
Coming back, how did it feel once you came back?
Oh, not good. Not good. Well, no one talked about it. My friends, my mates, no one talked about it, you know. And we lived in a hut there. There was 12 people in the hut. And I used to get the Sun, Herald Sun, which was a Melbourne paper, sent over. My wife would go and pay for that every week, and there was no cost. It used to get sent over to me. So it was about 5 to 7 days late, that paper. Put on my desk, and I used to leave it there. Anyone wanted to read it, they could come and read it. And one day a bloke read the paper, and the next minute he's swearing and throwing things against walls, and I'm thinking, what the heck's going on there? And his mother was on the front page of the Sun with Jim Cairns, a politician, opposing the war. And it just upset him. You know, he wasn't a bad bloke, but it just got at him, you know. Well, he's over fighting and his mother's out protesting against it. And that's the type of thing that went on all the time, you know. And when we come back, we learnt that. And I remember we come home on an RFA flight and the person in charge of that flight said, when you get off this plane, first thing you do is change into civvy clothes. And we went, okay. We went in the toilets and just changed into civvy clothes. Yeah. And that's the way it was.
And in terms of your life on base, were you expected to stand guard duty or did you have any other activities besides what you did?
Probably not guard so much, but you did a walk around Nui Dat, around the rubber plantation, which Nui Dat was an old rubber plantation. So you took turns in doing that. And I can't remember, I maybe did that 3 times, you know, so that'd be our turn to do that, yep.
Was that at night?
Yeah, that was for 2 days. We just worked 8 or 9 or 10 hours a day and come in and had tea, went to the boozer. If there was a film on, you went to watch that and then went to bed. You had every Sunday afternoon off and every 4th Sunday off.
And then how long were you there before you could come home for R&R?
After 7 months, I think, or maybe 6 months. But I wasn't coming home. I wasn't going to do anything for R&R. And a mate of mine, he was coming home with another friend of his in the army, but he got sent home. He got sent home before his trip. And my mate said to me, oh, why don't you come on his seat? And I said, no, I'm right. No, he talked me into it. And I still say that's the biggest mistake I made. I came home and I said to my wife, don't tell anyone. I'm coming home, just don't tell anyone. So she didn't tell anyone. She didn't tell her mother. No. And I walked in the door and her mother went, what are you doing here? She thought I was AWOL. And I said, no, I'm here. I'm allowed to be here. And she said, are you hungry? I said, I'm starving. She said, I'll cook you. I said, we're going to have tea in a couple of hours, but I'll cook you a couple of eggs. She cooked me a couple of eggs. And I said, where did you get these from? She said, beg your pardon? I said, where'd you get the eggs from? I said, they're really good eggs. You want a couple more? I said, yep. And I found out later that our eggs in Vietnam were etherised. So they were injected with ether. They looked like an egg, but they didn't smell or taste like an egg. And I didn't realise that until I come home. See, that's those sort of things you just get on with it.
Thinking back, is there anything that really stand out for you?
Some experiences I've kept for the rest of my life, some friends I've made for the rest of my life. Yeah, it's part of life, but I suppose people in that era would have those experiences in life too. Yeah, I don't hate going in. I was glad to get out though. I didn't stay in longer than I had to. I was in the army for 2 years and I was in Vietnam for 12 months and 5 days.
And then how did you come back?
I came back on the RAAF, 3-day flight on the way home. So we stopped in Malaysia and then went to Darwin and then flew into Sydney. And it was a couple of mates. Once again, his brother was in the Air Force and he got us on the flight. I wouldn't do that again. I would have rather come straight home. Because they were doing it, I thought I'll do it too. But yeah, in hindsight, if I had that chance again, I would come home, just get on the plane and come home. Yeah.
What stood out for you the most? What did you enjoy the most about being in Vietnam?
Yeah, the camaraderie, the friendship, and how everyone worked together. You know, there was very little arguing or fighting in the army. I never remember seeing a fight in the army. I'm talked to people that have, but I can't remember seeing one. We were in a troop of 48 people, and usually there was only about 3 regulars in it. So the rest were nashos. So we probably lived off that a bit. I remember we had to do a stand-to one night and, you know, we got out of our huts because they spray all the huts with insecticides. And the big boss, he was doing rounds in his Jeep, you know, just having a look at everyone. And we had a sign up in our group, "This is our home and we're homesick and we're sick of this." Or something to those words, you know, where everyone just laughed at it. You know, they took it as a joke.
The guys in your group, were they just engineers?
Oh, they were engineers. So they were all 17 construction engineers. But they were concreters, electricians, carpenters, painters, labourers, everything. We had the lot in there.
And you mentioned earlier about when you went out to rescue tanks. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I was out land clearing, and those tanks used to get bogged very easy. And so because I was on the radio, they'd say I have to go out with the D8 because they need to keep check on them. So I'd go out and I'd just pull them out. And it wouldn't take much of an effort to pull them out. Once they got them on hard ground, they just let them go. But yeah, they just weren't made. They were made for the deserts, those tanks, not made for wet conditions.
They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.